Welcome to the Stoic Tide. You've spent too many days moving like the outcome of your life is up for debate, as if your worth is still waiting to be proven, as if success is something you have to earn through suffering or approval or luck. But deep down, you've always known that's a lie. The Stoics taught us that fortune doesn't govern us. Our perception does, and the moment you decide to stop waiting for signs for timing for someone else to choose you, that's the moment you take your first real step toward mastery, because there's a kind of power that isn't loud but unshakable, and it begins the second you act. Not as someone trying to win, but as someone who has already won in spirit. In this video, we're going to explore the psychology, the posture, and the daily practices behind that mindset. Not hype, not arrogance, just the quiet certainty that reshapes your reality from the inside out. If that speaks to something in you, consider subscribing for the version of yourself that refuses to live on pause. Let this be a place where your growth is not an accident, but a decision. Most people live their lives waiting for something external to choose them. Some sign, some person, some moment that makes them feel like it's finally time to act. They give away their power to the world and then wonder why nothing bends in their favor. But what if the world isn't the one deciding? What if the world is simply reflecting the decision you've already made in silence deep within yourself? There's a truth we don't like to face because it removes every excuse that reality starts bending. Not when things feel right, but when you start moving with the certainty that it already is. That kind of certainty doesn't need applause. It doesn't wait for consensus. It doesn't stop to ask, is this the right time? It steps forward as if the path has already been cleared, because in the mind of someone who's already decided it has, there's a reason people follow those who are certain. It's not about charisma. It's not about control. It's about energy. The unmistakable energy of someone who no longer negotiates with hesitation. They don't waste time wondering whether or not they belong. They walk in like it's already theirs in the world. Unsure of how to respond, often just agrees. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not just a nice quote. It's a way of living. The man or woman who has truly decided does not flinch at resistance. They've already counted the cost, accepted it, and moved anyway. And because they no longer seek approval, they become almost untouchable. Not invincible, but unshakable. When your decision is complete, the ground beneath your feet becomes stable, even if the world around you is falling apart. It's the difference between drifting and directing. Most people drift. They test the wind. They check the temperature. They wait for someone else to move first, but the one who acts as if they cannot lose walks with an internal compass. They've buried the need for signs. They've buried the exit plans. Their energy says, I've already arrived, even if the outside hasn't caught up yet, and slowly it does, because people and circumstances tend to organize around the energy they're given. You show up half committed. You get half results. You show up as if you've already succeeded, and even failure becomes a stepping stone. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That becoming isn't granted, it's claimed, and it starts the moment you stop waiting to be chosen, when you stop hoping someone else will hand you your moment, and you start acting like it was yours all along. Not because you're faking it, but because you finally decided to stop shrinking around your potential. There's something magnetic about someone who's done debating with doubt. Their presence alone speaks, louder than words. It reminds others what's possible, even if it makes some uncomfortable. But that discomfort isn't your problem. That's the price of certainty. We live in a world that trains us to seek approval before commitment, to ask questions like, am I good enough? Is this realistic? Will they understand me? But the moment you switch those questions out for statements like, I will, I am, I'm going, everything changes. The point isn't to never doubt, it's to act. In spite of doubt, it's to stand before uncertainty and say, I've made up my mind and I'm moving anyway. That's what makes the world begin to follow. Not your talent, not your luck, your decision. Because people recognize when someone's energy doesn't flinch. They sense when you've already chosen yourself. And often they follow, not because they believe in your vision, but because they see that you believe in it so deeply, so completely, that their resistance becomes irrelevant. This isn't about pretending to be fearless. It's about being done with hesitation. It's about saying, even if I fall forward. Even if I get pushed back, I return stronger. And that mindset doesn't come from reading the right books or watching the right videos. It comes from a quiet decision, made in a moment of truth. I will no longer live as if losing is an option. That decision is the first domino, everything else. Discipline, action, growth, outcome falls into place after it. Because once you've decided fully, the rest becomes a matter of time, not possibility. There will be resistance. There will be noise. There will be days where the decision feels heavier than you expected. But if it's real, if the choice was made, not from pressure but from clarity, then no amount of noise will make you return to the person who still needed permission to act. The Stoics remind us, character is fate. Who you are determines what happens next. So when you decide who you are with full conviction, the world is forced to react. That's not fantasy. That's the deepest reality. The world obeys, the one who has already decided, because that decision creates its own gravity. Doubt always has a reason to wait. It looks for just a little more reassurance, a bit more certainty, one final sign that the path is safe before taking a single step. It asks endless questions but never answers any of them. It talks in circles, replaying fears dressed up as logic, repeating the same story in slightly different words. What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I'm wrong? And while doubt talks, time slips away. Momentum fades. The window of opportunity, which once felt wide open, begins to shrink. Not because the chance disappeared, but because the one who hesitated did. Certainty doesn't ask for guarantees. It doesn't wait for conditions to be perfect. It doesn't sit around asking permission to believe. It just moves even when it's hard, even when there are risks, even when the outcome isn't fully visible, because certainty isn't born from external proof, it's born from internal choice. When someone decides to move forward with the energy of, I cannot lose, they aren't claiming invincibility, they're claiming commitment. They've simply decided that the cost of hesitation is too high, so they move not because they've silenced their fear, but because they've chosen not to listen to it anymore. This is where the real difference lies. The person driven by doubt tries to eliminate fear before taking action, but the person fueled by certainty knows that action itself is what weakens fear. When you keep moving, fear loses its grip. Not all at once, but breath by breath. You starve it. You stop feeding it with your attention, and little by little, it begins to shrink. It becomes background noise, still there, but no longer in control. Seneca once said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And he was right, because what we imagine going wrong often becomes more painful than anything that ever actually happens. Most of our failures don't come from events. They come from inaction, from never stepping forward in the first place. You don't need to be fearless to move with power. You just need to stop waiting for the fear to go away. Because the more you wait, the stronger it becomes. The longer you delay, the more you teach your mind to associate risk with retreat, and soon retreat becomes a habit. But certainty teaches a different pattern. It says, this may not go exactly how I planned, but I will learn. I will adjust. I will not stop. That's not recklessness. That's wisdom paired with will. It's the understanding that clarity often follows action, not the other way around. Carl Jung wrote, what you resist persists, and when you resist action, when you stall, under the weight of indecision, you give power to the very thing you're trying to avoid. You make the fear larger by treating it as a threat instead of an illusion. Because fear often isn't the enemy. It's the echo of a belief that hasn't been challenged. Yet, and you challenge it by acting, by doing the thing your fear says you can't do. You don't wait for the fear to go away. You walk through it. And on the other side, you find something stronger. Evidence. Evidence that you survived, that you learned, that you grew, and that you were capable all along. When you act as if you cannot lose, You move from the center of your own decision, not from the edges of other people's opinions or your own worst-case scenarios. You don't try to prove anything to the world, you prove something to yourself. That you are someone who keeps moving, someone who can walk forward in uncertainty and still build clarity with each step. Someone who does not need to know how the entire road ends in order to take the next turn. It's not about being reckless, it's about refusing to freeze. Doubt paralyzes, certainty unlocks doubt, shrinks your world until it's nothing but a list of reasons not to try. But certainty expands it. It opens new doors. Not because they were hidden, but because you were too afraid to knock. And now you do. You knock, you push forward, and when you do, you realize something powerful. Progress doesn't come from perfect plans, it comes from consistent courage. This is the heartbeat of action. Not absence of fear, but presence of purpose. The kind of purpose that says, even if I fail, I'll rise. Even if I fall short, I'll move again. That's what separates those who reach their aim from those who only imagine it, the ones who move. Despite the fear, despite the doubt, despite the uncertainty, are the ones who grow. Because they've stopped negotiating with hesitation. They've stopped waiting for the outside world to confirm what they've already decided on the inside. So if you've been waiting for the right time, this is it. Not because conditions are perfect, but because your certainty doesn't need them to be. Doubt will keep asking for more proof, more time, more security. But you already know where that path leads to. More of the same. But certainty, it leads to movement. And movement is the only thing that changes anything when you carry the energy of someone who cannot lose. You don't wait for the path to clear. You walk forward and you clear it yourself one step at a time before anything becomes real. It must first become imagined. The mind does not chase what it cannot see. And this is where most people quietly lose before they ever begin. They haven't built the picture. They haven't created the blueprint. They say they want change, growth, success, freedom. But ask them what it looks like, and their words begin to drift. Their vision is vague, unfocused, an idea without weight. And the subconscious, which builds quietly in the background of your life, doesn't respond to fog. It responds to form before a bridge is built. It is drawn before a book is written. It is outlined before a life is transformed. A clear image must take root, not one of hope, but of certainty. And that image must become more familiar than the life you're currently living when you act. As if you cannot lose. You're not pretending, you're aligning yourself with a picture so deeply embedded in your psyche that it begins to pull you forward like gravity. You don't have to force it. You simply begin to live inside it. Every movement, every choice, every reaction starts echoing that inner world, even before the outer world reflects it. This is how the future is built, by walking in it before anyone else sees it. Not by waiting, but by deciding to see with clarity what has not yet taken form. And clarity is not born by chance. It is built through repetition, through detail, through emotional engagement. The question isn't, do you want it? The question is, can you describe it? Can you see it when your eyes are closed? In color, in motion, in depth? Can you feel it in your chest as if it's already yours? Because if you can't, the mind will keep drifting back to what's familiar. And what's familiar is what's current. Your current problems, your current limitations, your current past. So unless you create something stronger, more vivid, more practiced, your present reality will keep pulling you back. The Stoics understood the power of the internal world. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," which means the quality of your thinking does not just shape your choices, it shapes your essence. What you repeatedly think you become, and what you envision regularly, you begin to perform without effort. It seeps into your posture, your speech, your decisions. That's not just psychology, that's law. Mental rehearsal changes your neurological wiring. Visualization, when done with emotion, imprints a new standard into the body, and once that standard is accepted, the mind begins filtering out anything that contradicts it. So instead of asking whether your dream is realistic, start by asking if it's real enough in your own mind. Is it sharp enough that your subconscious can begin moving toward it? Is it grounded enough that your decisions start to align without needing constant motivation? Because motivation fades, pictures remain, and if you want to act as someone who cannot lose, you must build a vision. You're unwilling to betray. That's what makes your habits change. Not guilt, not pressure, but loyalty to the person you've already become in your mind. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart, who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakens." That kind of awakening isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's a shift in focus from waiting for the world to show you what's possible to showing the world what you've already decided is yours. It's waking up and reviewing the image again, feeling it again, strengthening its colors again, until it no longer feels like imagination, it feels like memory. That's when your energy changes. That's when people notice something different in your voice, your walk, your presence. They may not understand it, but they'll feel it. And the most powerful part, you don't need them to see it. You only need to see it clearly enough that you can hold it even when no one else does. Even when nothing outside supports it yet. Because reality is often slow to reflect the mind's new truth, but it always catches up slowly, subtly then, all at once, and when it does, it never feels like a surprise. It feels like recognition, like something you've known was coming. You can't outperform your own mental image, but you can redraw it, refine it, revisit it, make it detailed, enough that the universe has no choice but to fill in the outline. That's the discipline, not just thinking positively, not just hoping, but building an internal world so rich in clarity and emotion that it becomes the foundation of your identity. Because once your identity changes, everything else follows. The choices, the people, the opportunities, all begin aligning with the image you've already committed to living. So if you're still unsure where to begin, start here. One image, one sentence, one feeling. Create the clearest, most detailed vision of who you are becoming. Speak it, write it, feel it, and let it grow stronger than your past. That image is not just a dream, it's the seed of your becoming. Nurture it, protect it, and act in alignment with it even when the world hasn't caught up, because it will. It always does. The way you speak is the way you build. Every sentence you say, especially when you're alone, is a quiet instruction to your subconscious, and your subconscious is always listening. It doesn't care whether you're being cautious or confident. It only hears the rhythm of your words and begins laying bricks accordingly. That's why language is never neutral. It either creates movement or introduces resistance every time. You say, "If this works," you unknowingly tell yourself that failure is not only possible, but likely. You open a door you never needed to open. Doubt doesn't need much space to grow. One crack in your language is often enough. But when you say it is working, something entirely different happens. You shift from wish to certainty, not because the outcome is already visible, but because your posture no longer depends on visibility. And that posture, that energy behind your words, is everything. When you speak from belief instead of fear, you activate the part of your mind that begins solving, building, and adapting. Not waiting, not hesitating, not holding back. This is why your voice becomes your first act of creation. It is not just sound. It is a signal, a declaration of what kind of reality you are aligning yourself with. Too many people speak as if their dreams are distant possibilities. They use soft, fragile words that barely carry weight. I hope this turns out okay. I'll try, maybe if things go right and they believe they're being humble. But humility is not self-doubt. It's strength under control. And there is no strength in vague speech. It only confuses the mind. It muddies the water. The person who speaks with clarity, even in uncertainty, is already building what others are still trying to define. Their words lay down structure, their sentences become scaffolding, their language sets the tone not just for their mindset, but for their results. This isn't about faking confidence, it's about aligning with what you've already committed to. When a builder sketches a plan, they don't keep asking, "What if the roof collapses?" They draw with the expectation that what's designed will be built. Your words are that sketch. If you hesitate, while drawing the structure never rises. But when you speak with clarity, the mind begins construction immediately. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." He didn't say think about it. He said, say it, because speech isn't just a reflection of thought. It is a force that shapes thought. The person who acts as if they cannot lose begins by speaking, as if loss were not even a question. This doesn't mean ignoring risk or reality. It means speaking from the outcome rather than the obstacle. It means choosing your words with the same precision you would use to design a bridge. Because if one part is off, the entire structure becomes unstable. Speak of your goal, not as something you're chasing, but as something you're constructing. Not as an idea, but as a fact in motion. And when you do, you'll notice something strange begin to happen. Your emotions will start to follow your habits, will start to shift your environment. Little by little, will begin to reflect the words you've been using all along. Language is a kind of promise. Every time you say, I am doing this, even before results show up, you make a contract with yourself. And breaking that contract doesn't just delay your progress, it weakens your sense of trust in your own voice. That's why careless language is so dangerous. When you constantly say things you don't mean or speak without intention, your subconscious learns not to take your words seriously. But when you speak with purpose and follow through, especially in small things, you begin to believe yourself. And once you believe yourself, others begin to believe you too. Carl Jung once noted that people don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The darkness in many cases is unconscious language. The habits of speech we've picked up from fear culture or failure phrases we've repeated for years without realizing how they limit us. Part of becoming someone who cannot lose is examining how you speak when no one's listening. Are your words reinforcing the version of you that leads or the version of you that waits? Do you talk about your goals like facts or fantasies, because the way you speak about them is often the way you'll approach them? Words spoken in faith are not loud. They are steady. They don't need to convince, they confirm. And this confirmation becomes the rhythm of your life. It starts in your inner world and ripples outward, reshaping how you show up in every situation. You walk into rooms differently. You make decisions faster. You carry yourself, not with arrogance, but with quiet, unshakable direction, because your words have already paved the path and now you're simply following it. So speak as if it is already unfolding, not to pretend but to align. Speak like a builder who trusts their blueprint, like a leader who knows where they're going even if others don't yet see the map. Let your words carry structure. Let them reinforce clarity. Let them be the foundation that steadies you when everything around you feels uncertain. The person who acts as if they cannot lose begins by speaking in a way that leaves no room for retreat. Their words do not bend with doubt, they hold. And in that holding, the world begins to take shape. Anyone can be bold for a moment. Anyone can feel inspired for a day, maybe even a week. It's easy to take action when the winds of motivation are at your back, when things feel fresh and full of promise. But the moment those winds die down, the truth begins to surface. That's when most people start looking for exits, some way to justify quitting, without having to admit that they've simply given up. But the one who acts as if they cannot lose doesn't need the wind. They don't wait for conditions to be perfect. They move as if the outcome is already inevitable. And so they keep going even when there's no sign that it's working yet. Because for them, persistence isn't a mood. It's a muscle. When you've truly decided deeply, with no room left for debate, persistence becomes the natural rhythm of your life. It's not forced. It's not something you have to talk yourself into each morning. It's automatic because it's tied to something deeper than excitement or hype. It's tied to who you are now. Preference fades the moment it gets hard, but real decision is what shows up when it's dark quiet. And the world isn't applauding. The Stoics called this discipline, not in the way most people use the word today, but as a kind of inner loyalty to your chosen path. It's the unspoken promise that says, I will not abandon myself, even when the world offers me every excuse to. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And one of the quietest ways we waste time is by constantly restarting, by jumping in and out of commitments, doubting ourselves at every small setback and chasing new beginnings instead of finishing what we said we would. Persistence is the antidote to that cycle. It's the slow, steady breath of someone who has stopped entertaining escape routes, the one who acts as if they cannot lose, does not measure their progress by applause or results alone. They measure it by their refusal to retreat. They wake up each day and return to the work, not because it's exciting, but because it's necessary. Carl Jung once observed that you are what you do not, what you say you'll do. It's a hard truth, but a freeing one, because it removes the need to explain or convince. You don't need to talk about your plans endlessly. You just show up. You let your repetition speak for itself. Most people don't fail because they were wrong. They fail because they stopped too soon. They misread resistance as rejection, delay as denial. But delay isn't the universe saying no. It's often a test, a filter, a refinement process. Those who keep moving through it gain strength. Most others will never touch because they weren't willing to last long enough to reach it. And persistence is rarely glamorous. It looks boring on the outside. It's often invisible, but it is the bridge between decision and reality. Every great result you've ever admired was built quietly in the hours when no one else was watching, when no one was clapping, when nothing looked like it was working. The one who acts as if they cannot lose understands that those hours matter more than the moments people celebrate, because that's where the roots grow. That's where you earn the right to stand firm when others collapse. The temptation to stop will come dressed in logic. It'll tell you it's being realistic, that you've already tried enough, that maybe this wasn't meant for you after all. But that voice isn't truth. It's tiredness disguised as reason. And tiredness can be overcome. You rest and you return. You breathe and you rebuild. You remind yourself that quitting is not the same as being strategic. One protects your energy. The other steals your future. Persistence doesn't mean you never adjust. It means you adjust without abandoning. You evolve without disappearing. You bend without breaking. And each time you persist, you reinforce the truth that you're not someone who just starts. You're someone who finishes. That's where real confidence comes from. Not from talking about what you could do, but from knowing in your bones that you follow through, that when you say yes to a path, you walk it even when it's uphill, even when it's quiet, even when nothing outside gives you a reason to continue, because the reason lives inside you now. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly that applies to outcomes, but it also applies to identity. Becoming someone who cannot lose doesn't happen overnight. It's forged in the repeated choice to stay steady, to return to the plan, when you've forgotten the feeling to rise. Not with fireworks, but with intention, over and over again, until the world around you stops asking if you're serious and begins responding as if you are. Persistence is not proof that you are perfect. It is proof that you have decided. It is the daily reminder that you are no longer negotiating with doubt, that the door has been closed and the only direction left is forward. Not fast, not dramatic, just forward, again and again and again, until the result has no choice but to arrive, because you never gave it the chance to escape. There's a quiet misunderstanding that ruins many people before they even begin. They believe that transformation happens in one loud moment, a sudden spark, a powerful realization, a lightning strike of motivation. But change doesn't happen like that. Real transformation is slow, rhythmic, and often unnoticed. It's not about what you think. Once it's about what you think again and again and again. One clear, intentional thought spoken with conviction and felt deeply repeated enough times begins to reshape who you are, at the level most people never reach. Not the surface, the core. What we rehearse, we become, not by pretending, but by practicing. That's why the idea that repetition is fake is so dangerous. Rehearsal is not lying to yourself. It's preparation. When you practice speaking from strength, even if your voice shakes, you're laying a foundation for the day. Your voice doesn't shake at all when you practice thinking clearly. Even if your thoughts are messy at first, you're training your mind to cut through noise. You're carving out a new internal rhythm, one that doesn't default to fear, one that doesn't retreat under pressure. one that begins over time to move toward what you've been choosing to believe. This is why vision alone isn't enough. A single image of your future, no matter how vivid, can't stand up to the force of your daily thoughts if you don't reinforce it. You must bring it back, review it, strengthen it, speak it until your nervous system begins to treat it like a memory rather than a possibility, because repetition is how the unfamiliar becomes familiar, and eventually the familiar becomes automatic. What felt like fiction begins to feel like identity, not because the world confirmed it, but because you refuse to stop engraving it into your mind. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That unconscious part of you isn't malicious. It's just doing what it's always done. It's running the script. It's been given again and again. But the moment you realize you can write a new script, everything changes, not instantly, but inevitably, because with repetition, even your unconscious mind becomes your ally. And when your inner world finally aligns with your outer actions, you move through life with a kind of calm clarity. Most people only glimpse. Controlled thought is often misunderstood. Some see it as forced or unnatural, but it's not. It's discipline. It's a return to agency. You are no longer scattered, pulled in 5 different directions by emotion, impulse, and distraction. You're no longer reacting to every piece of noise that tries to claim your attention. You become selective, intentional. Your focus sharpens, and so does your life. You begin to notice how many things once consumed you that no longer deserve your energy. You become more efficient, not because you're faster, but because you've stopped wasting mental fuel on things that don't build the future. You've been rehearsing. That future, if rehearsed with enough clarity and emotion, begins to feel like something you're remembering, not inventing. And that shift changes how you act, how you walk, how you make decisions. You're no longer choosing based on fear or doubt. You're choosing based on alignment, on whether or not something fits the version of yourself you've already committed to becoming. And when that alignment is consistent, your actions begin to feel effortless. Not because they're easy, but because they're right. They belong. You've rehearsed them. They feel like home. The person who acts as if they cannot lose does not rely on motivation. To carry them, they've built a vision strong enough that repetition alone becomes their fuel. They return to it daily, not as a chore, but as a ritual, a recalibration. They speak their aim aloud. They revisit the details. They sit with the emotion, not out of desperation, but out of discipline, because they understand that without reinforcement, the mind drifts. And when the mind drifts, it usually drifts backwards, toward doubt, toward old habits, toward the familiar past. Repetition is the anchor that keeps you moving forward when everything else wants to pull you back. Marcus Aurelius in his reflections often reminded himself of what he already knew, not because he forgot, but because he understood the power of mental reinforcement. He knew that the strongest minds are not the ones who seek new truths constantly, but the ones who return daily to what matters most. That is how philosophy becomes real, how vision becomes action, how thoughts become character. So if you feel far from who you want to be, don't chase a breakthrough, practice a blueprint. Speak your vision. Refine the details. Repeat it until it no longer feels like effort. It feels like memory. Because the more you rehearse the future you want, the more natural it becomes to live in ways that support it. Your mind stops needing to try. It simply starts to believe, and what the mind believes with clarity and consistency, the body begins to follow in the end. Who you become is a result of what you allow yourself to envision, over and over again. One vision deeply felt, one sentence spoken daily, one identity rehearsed in silence until it becomes louder than the noise of doubt. That is not a trick, it's a law. You become what you repeatedly envision, not because the world changes, but because you do. And the world eventually reflects that no one ascends alone. Not really. The idea of the self-made person sounds noble, even inspiring, but when you look closely at any meaningful success, you'll find a network, a few key voices, a small number of people who reminded them what they were capable of when they were about to forget. Because the truth is, even the strongest minds have moments of doubt. Even the most determined hearts experience fatigue. But when you're surrounded by aligned minds, by people who believe in the future you've committed to, it changes everything. Their presence becomes a stabilizer. Their belief, a mirror. They reflect back the version of you that you are becoming, even when your vision gets blurry. But not every group strengthens you. Some people without meaning to pull you off. Of course, they don't have to be cruel to be harmful. Some weaken you simply by being casual with your seriousness. They laugh when you speak your dreams aloud. They interrupt your focus with distractions wrapped in good intentions, and slowly, if you're not careful, your edge softens, your clarity fades, not because you lost your vision, but because you were standing in rooms that didn't require you to remember it. When you share your goals with people who don't hold you to them, you risk lowering your own standards just to match the room. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." That's what alignment really is. Not just getting along, but evolving together. You don't need hype. You don't need people to cheer you on from the sidelines. You need people in the trenches with you. Co-builders. Those who don't just celebrate your progress, but call out your drift. Those who remind you what you said you'd become on the days you'd rather forget. And the right people don't try to control your journey. They just won't let you lie to yourself about it. Their belief isn't based on comfort or convenience. It's forged in the same fire you're walking through. That's what makes it powerful. You look around and see that you're not the only one holding the line. You're not the only one still showing up. That alone makes you stronger, because when discipline falters, alignment sustains. You borrow strength from each other. When your own feels low, and you lend it in return. That mutual reinforcement isn't just practical. It's sacred. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you," but he didn't say they had to be many. Even two aligned minds can carry the force of 20 divided ones. Harmony matters more than volume. One person whose values match your direction is worth more than 100 casual voices. The size of the group doesn't matter. The clarity of the bond does. It's not about being surrounded, it's about being supported. This is why you must choose carefully, because proximity is power. You absorb the rhythm of the people closest to you, whether you mean to or not. If they live in doubt, you begin to second guess. If they mock discipline, you begin to loosen yours. If they don't challenge themselves, they won't challenge you either. You begin to shrink, not because you've changed your mind, but because you've changed your environment, and the mind always conforms to its environment over time. That's why aligned minds matter. They don't just help you grow. They protect your direction. They create a kind of mental gravity that keeps you centered when life pulls in one, there is zero directions. You don't have to explain your intensity. You don't have to apologize for wanting more in the right circle. Your ambition doesn't intimidate it. Inspires your discipline, doesn't isolate it. Connects your vision, doesn't make you different. It makes you understood. Marcus Aurelius warned that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, but it's not just your thoughts that color your soul. It's also the company you keep. The people you let into your inner circle are like ink dropped in water. They will mix into your energy, your habits, your self-concept. That's inevitable. What's not inevitable is who you let in. That part is yours to decide. So be intentional. Choose people whose presence sharpens you. People who speak your name in rooms you're not in. People who talk to you like you've already become the person you're working toward. Not because they're flattering you, but because they see your trajectory clearly. They speak life into it. They hold space for it. They won't let you forget it. These are not casual connections. These are anchors. And when you find them, when you build that circle, you'll feel the shift. You'll move with more certainty. Your goals will feel heavier in the best way. You'll stop asking for motivation because you'll have momentum. You'll wake up to people who hold you to your higher self, and that is one of the most powerful forces on earth. Because when aligned, minds move together, they multiply. One vision becomes stronger. One doubt becomes lighter, and forward becomes the only direction. This isn't about perfection. It's about resonance. It's about standing next to people who remind you, without needing to say a word, that you are not alone in your discipline, your vision, or your becoming. And when the world gets noisy and your mind gets tired, it is those people, the aligned ones, who will steady you until you can steady yourself again when you begin to live like it's already yours. Something subtle but powerful takes root. You stop chasing things from a place of lack and instead begin acting from a place of quiet certainty. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You're no longer searching the world for permission to believe you've already chosen to believe, and now your actions, tone, and presence begin to reflect that you walk into rooms without explaining yourself. You speak without needing validation. You stop proving and start becoming, because something in your posture says, I've already arrived. Even if the destination hasn't shown up yet, this isn't about pretending. It's not about faking confidence or forcing positivity. It's about practicing presence, real presence, the kind that comes from anchoring yourself in the truth you've decided to live by long before anyone else recognizes it. You no longer act like someone trying to earn their future. You act like someone carrying it already. And when you do that, the world begins to organize around you. Not because of magic, but because clarity has gravity. When you know who you are and walk in that knowing, people respond differently. Doors open, conversations shift, resistance weakens, and when your actions begin to mirror your inner conviction, you stop living on the edge of your potential and step fully into it. You speak with less noise, not because you're trying to be quiet, but because your certainty doesn't require volume. There's no need to convince, no need to explain. Your energy becomes the evidence, and that evidence does more to shape the world around you than any argument ever could. Living as if it's already yours doesn't mean you're blind to reality. It means you've chosen to see beyond it. You're aware of the challenges, you recognize the gap between now and then, but you no longer measure your behavior based on the gap. You measure it based on the goal you begin, making decisions not from your current circumstances, but from your future self. What would they choose? How would they move? What would they say yes to or walk away from without hesitation? That shift in perspective rewrites your entire approach to life, and when you begin living from that space, desperation falls away. You stop clinging. You stop needing everything to happen immediately because you know it's coming. You've already claimed it in your mind. And now your job is simply to act like someone preparing for it, not someone begging for it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way when you move as if it's already yours." Obstacles don't stop you. They shape you. They become part of the process rather than proof that it's not working. People often think they need more time, more proof, more support before they can step fully into their next level. But most of the time, what they really need is permission from themselves, the courage to stop waiting for something external to justify moving differently, the willingness to embody a new standard, even if the world hasn't caught up to it yet. That is the beginning of power, not controlling others, not forcing results, but commanding your own state, your own reactions, your own focus, your own integrity. When you live like it's already done, you begin to treat every moment as part of the unfolding, not an audition. You no longer second-guess whether or not you belong. You show up and build. You no longer ask if you're enough. You act in ways that honor the fact that you already are. That shift is subtle but seismic, and over time it changes how people relate to you. You don't need to push for attention. You draw it not by demanding it, but by embodying something people can feel, but can't always explain. Seneca once said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." But when you live like it's already yours, you don't wait for luck. You create the conditions where opportunity feels natural. Your preparation isn't random. It's precise because you already see where you're going, and now everything you do reflects that destination. Your habits become cleaner. Your speech becomes sharper. Your presence becomes stronger, and people begin treating you like the person you've been becoming all along. Living from that place doesn't require perfection. It requires commitment, a willingness to return to your vision each day and act accordingly, not because it's easy, But because you've already decided, you walk differently because you're carrying something within you that hasn't arrived yet, but already feels real, and that internal reality is what bends external circumstances over time. This is the quiet strength of those who become unshakable. They don't wait for conditions to be ideal before living as their highest self. They bring their highest self into less than ideal conditions and change them. Their energy is the force that transforms rooms, not the reaction to what's already in them, and that energy is cultivated, not inherited. It's practiced, not gifted. So if you want to act as if you cannot lose, start by showing up as if the victory is already written. Stand as if the ground beneath you was designed to hold your success. Speak as if your words already carry weight. Work as if your vision depends on you, not chance. Because it does when you begin to live like it's already yours. The world can't help but respond. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped doubting what's already been placed inside you. You're no longer asking, waiting, or proving you're becoming. And everything else eventually will align the moment you begin to live as if you cannot lose. The world no longer decides who you become. You do not someday, not when it's easy, but now. Let that decision echo through everything you do from this moment forward. If this spoke to something real in you, there's another step. Waiting. Watch one of the videos on the screen and keep building the life that already belongs to you, and thank you for walking this path with us. If this video resonates, you will please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons for more insights. Stay stoic, stay blessed.